So Jess, next week we head off to Europe for 3 months. We've alluded to it previously on this podcast, but probably haven't really given a lot of context and gone into depth of why we're actually doing it. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. So hopefully we can answer some of those today.
Yeah, definitely. In the DMs, I think we're getting asked how does the business still run when we're away? Are we going to still be operating here in Australia? All sorts of things. So I want to kind of dispel some of that misinformation. This isn't COVID. This is a Coldplay podcast. But yeah, I want to dive right in, Jack. So let's speak about Europe.
Cool. So why Europe is probably a good place to start. Why Europe rather than America or somewhere else or Asia? I suppose, we've already done Asia quite a bit, been over there. We got a lot of our manufacturers there. For us, starting this business, we always wanted to travel with it. That was a big thing for us, and being I suppose autonomous and being in control of if we do want to go overseas with it, we can, and that's obviously a big draw card for starting your own business. So yeah, I think part of it's personal and let's see more of the world. We've both lived overseas previously and loved that time, so feels like we just have that itch to kind of do it again.
Yeah, I think specifically for both Jack and I, we're both born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, and that's a country of 25 million people. I like to look at Australia as the great comfort of the world. I think probably one of the best places to raise a family. But as a young, man in this world, or young individual, I just want to get out and explore. I want to kind of experience a little bit of risk, live a bit more on the edge. It's sort of hard to do that here in Australia. We're not at the cutting edge of a lot of things, if we're honest. I think in a fashion sense, I think we get a lot of influence from Europe, America. So we want to be, with our fingers on the pulse.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. Yeah, so we've chosen Europe. Few reasons. They're obviously big in fashion, particularly places like the UK, Paris, Spain, Portugal, a lot bigger than we are here in Australia. So that's a big thing. I would say too, there's probably less barriers to entry with maybe living there and getting visas and things of that nature compared to maybe a US. So that's probably a big reason too that it is Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being among so many cultures is massive. And you've lived in America for 4 years. I've done about 5 trips there. So I think we've got a good taste of America, and absolutely that's on the cards at some point.
Yeah.
We'll walk before we run. I mean, Europe's a pretty big step, but I'd love to think if we got our feet pretty solid in Europe, then we'd be looking at America not too long after. I know a big part of us running this business together is both from an American influence. Over there, people think really big. No dreams too big. So that's certainly why we're here.
Yep, 100%. So we've been getting quite a few questions from different people, especially the last few months now that people know that it's happening. A big one has been, around risk, and probably a lot of family members, friends, they want the best for you in the most part. How's it all going to look? Are you biting off, too much than you can chew? Things of that nature. So maybe we can break down some of the risks that maybe we see and how we've approached it.
Yeah, I mean, off the bat, we're only going for 3 months this time around. I think that's important to note. There was some thought that we just go. I know you were of that camp early days. It was let's just set up and take ourselves really seriously. I love that train of thought. I also know there's a lot of ambiguity over there. It's don't know the factories in Portugal, how they operate. You've got to learn these things from just being there. And we have that luxury to go there for 3 months and really figure some things out. So I'm sure that's a way we're mitigating risk. What other risks do you see there, Jack?
I mean, big one is financial. Obviously, it's going to cost a fair bit of money for us to go over there. Jesse and I aren't going to take a wage while we're there. Instead, we're just going to try and, cover our travel expenses. So I suppose in a way we are, but it's not like we're going to be paying ourselves at the same time.
To get transparent about wages, because we've been transparent since day one, and it's something it's a real common theme on this podcast, is Jack and I are still on a less than minimum salary here, probably half a minimum wage.
So
So just to make that super clear that, you know, we are going to Europe, we are taking big steps in a business sense. From a personal sense, we are, you know, I've been chewing into my savings for quite a while, and I'm fortunate to be able to be in a position to do that. But to make that super clear, and just for the businesses listening, you really have to prioritize your business before you prioritize yourself.
Yeah, it's a good point. We're definitely investing in the business long before we're gonna, put things in our pockets. And why wouldn't we when the business is allowing us to go to Europe and see all these places? Like you can say that through doing that, we are investing in ourselves as well, and that's a big part of the trip. So yeah, for sure. So financial, that's a big one. Maybe
So culturally, like we don't know, you know, from Spain to Germany to France, you know, we want to work with different screen printers from a wholesale perspective. I'm sure they all have all different types of demands and thoughts on the way blanks should run.
yeah, like different markets. So we're gonna have to go figure it out, and that's why we're going. Like, there's only so much you can know or hear or speak to people here in Australia. Everyone's got an opinion on everything. So until you actually go and live it and see it, it's probably not worth feeding into too many of those.
Yeah, we're on the other side of the world. Like, yeah, you're only gonna really know when you're there and you learn it. And it varies from each country and each factory. So I think especially with Portugal, from a bit of initial research, there's a lot of public knowledge on factories in Portugal. It's very different to when we went to Vietnam and China, and we just had to scour the entire internet. We were almost on the dark web at one point looking for factories. Like we were literally just every angle speaking to every person, but it's almost the opposite coming into Portugal. There's this just absolute, massive factories there that are just so public.
Seem to service a lot of Europe. Yeah.
Absolutely. So very different this time around, and
Yeah.
very interested to see from our firsthand experience how we go.
Yeah. So I suppose a risk could be like, trying to navigate new markets and establish ourselves there, and our product and our service could be completely off what is expected there. So, that could be a risk that we're going to find out, I suppose. I had one more that I've just blanked on.
I think I might know it because it's a common question we've been getting. It is quite a risk. Is how does Australia operate whilst we're away?
That was there somewhere. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a big one that we get, and one that, to be honest, is like a pretty easy question for us to answer, because from day one we kind of knew this was always something we wanted to do, and so as a result we've set the business up in certain ways to be able to do this. So a good example is like all of our warehousing and fulfillment and storage of our stock, which is a big part of the business, we don't have our hands on. So that's that's here in Melbourne, but we per se as individuals, we don't really touch it. It's outsourced to a third party that we work really closely with, and that model's been working pretty well for us. It means we don't have to have all these massive overheads and be locked down to one location that comes with owning and operating a warehouse ourselves. So from that side of things, I mean, that's probably a lot of my area of the business. Like we think that's going to run pretty smoothly. Of course, there's going to be headaches and things that go wrong, but that's any time.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, I think we've certainly looked at this from mainly a wholesale perspective, and I think we started this business for wholesale, right? I mean, you only need to look at Uniqlo at a retail perspective and what they're doing in blanks. They're doing an incredible job, and that doesn't mean we're not going to compete with them head on. But I think from a wholesale perspective, as we've said time and time again on this podcast, that's where the opportunity lies, providing good quality blanks at scale to young businesses. So for us, that's the opportunity at hand in Europe. We're really looking at it from a wholesale perspective, but we're very lucky to have Henry back in Australia to keep our retail, because we think we're gaining a lot of momentum there in the middle of a campaign with our double zip up hoodie. And that's probably the garment we're most proud of to date. The way we've shot it, the quality of the garment's increased. We're really proud of it.
100%. Yeah, it definitely is going to help us sleep a bit easier with knowing that someone like Henry is back here to hold up the fort for a period of time. Just because obviously things come up and some things are urgent and And we like to be very customer facing and, hold our customers' hands. And I'm on the phone every day to customers that we deal with, and I've got personal relationships with them, and that's something we don't want to go away from. So, a big part of this has been like, if we go, how does that affect that?
Yeah,
How can we
we don't wanna lose
mitigate it? Yeah. And I'm going to be probably taking calls, the whole 3 months in Europe back here as well. So it's just part of it. It's what we have to do.
Yeah, and credit to Henry, he's willing to wear different hats. Yesterday we threw him into a meeting with a clothing brand that came through, and he'd never done that. And both of us were busy, so we just sent Henry out there, and that's what a small business is. It's able to know that's probably not his role. It's probably more yours and mine to a degree, but it's like to be able to go do that. Small businesses need to be versatile and flexible. So we're lucky to have a team that is, and I think our retail is going to go from strength to strength. There's some really exciting garments coming through. Every brand says that, but we believe that. I've seen it, and the proof's in the pudding with this zip up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
One more question
please.
We get, Jess, is, are we nervous? Do you want us to kick that one off? Or?
Sure. You know what, Jack? Like I've been asked many, many times in the last few weeks, how am I feeling in terms of like, what am I excited is the question, about being in Europe. And there's so much going on right now in our business from a wholesale and retail perspective. You've been moving heaven and earth to build a new website at wholesale with the help of some people. And me and Henry have been moving heaven and earth to show this zip up hoodie is the next, the sign of what's to come for retail and this big step we're taking as a brand. So I'm so engulfed in that I actually haven't really looked at Europe, if I'm honest. And I'm not mad about that, because I think there's an element of being present in the last few months. I haven't just allowed myself to, look at the future in that sense. So my response to people is, when I'm in London, I'll be in London and I'll deal with it. And, so to answer your question about nerves, it's hard to be nervous when you're not giving it time.
Something.
Yeah. What about you? Are you nervous?
No, not really. I don't think. There's definitely an element of excitement, I would more say, and a feeling of unknown, which I think is healthy. And if we didn't feel that, it probably wouldn't be a right move. So, but nerves per se, no. I think each day that goes by, we're coming together closer as a group, and I feel more and more confident about what we're doing and what we're going to be doing in Europe. So, no, not too nervous, but similar to you. I want to just take it day by day. There's been way too much going on here to get set up and ready for us to go over and be able to do what we're going to do over there. So, but super excited, definitely.
Let's give the listener a real rundown of what Europe looks like kind of from each week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're going for 3 months. We're going to jump around to a lot of different countries for the first 6 weeks. And then the last 6 weeks, we're going to hunker down in London for most of that, which is, I suppose, where we kind of think that our product and Color Plan as a business fits in the best, I suppose, over there. So we're starting in Italy. I know you're starting in Spain for a week. So Jesse and I have got a 1 week holiday, which will be much needed and nice just to reset, I suppose, before we dive in. Then we're in Italy together. We actually have a friend's wedding. Shout out to Jamie, which will be cool. There'll probably be a lot of work done there though as well. And then I suppose like the real business starts. We go to Portugal. So that's where a lot of the manufacturing is for Europe, especially with fleece and jersey products, which we specialize in.
Yep.
So we're going to be there for a week, which we're both really excited about. We're finding out a lot more about Portugal.
Yep.
That is making it seem like it could be a really good option moving forward. So that's a week. We come back to Italy again. Lots of Italy here. Florence for Pitti Uomo, which for anyone that's wondering is like a really big men's fashion trade show where all the biggest brands in Europe and for the world for that matter, and the biggest buyers in the world come and, display and show their new collections, seasons. So we're just, that for us is more get there, shake a lot of hands, take it all in.
Take some inspiration.
Ideas. Yeah. Like this is like the pinnacle of like men's fashion and what's coming. So hopefully that can, pay dividends down the line. Next week, Paris Fashion Week, very similar. take it all in. It's going to be, something we've probably dreamed about for a long time. So I'm sure being there is going to be very surreal. And yeah, a lot of this is we're going to figure it out on the fly when we're there too. Like, there's only so much you can organize and prepare. So, I'm pretty bullish on us just being the people we are and bumping into people, making conversations, meeting people, just being open. I think it's going to be a massive part of it. But yeah, how do you feel about those two spots? Maybe Pityamo and Paris?
Yeah, I think it's an awesome thing to surround ourselves with people that live and breathe fashion. It's maybe something that's more difficult to do here in a smaller market. So to be around people that are on the cutting edge and have big ideas, it's certainly got me excited from a retail perspective. I can't wait. I'm also just as excited to be in Portugal, and a big thing from us being in Vietnam and China, which we've spoke at length about on this podcast, is the relationships we build with our manufacturers. So I can't wait to find the right factory and build with them. And, whether that's for a retail or wholesale capacity or a bit of both, that's probably another thing that has me, really excited, because I've loved what we've been able to create in China and Vietnam with our suppliers.
Yeah.
They're very special relationships and very long-term ones. So it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, 100%. So where was I? Paris, I suppose. After Paris is when we're going to hunker down in London for roughly 6 weeks. It's not to say we might not jump around a little bit more. Henry's going to plan on coming across at some point while we're there to, shoot a lot of content, come around with us, even maybe go back to places like Portugal, Paris.
Yeah, get a feel for Europe.
Yeah. So, I suppose London right now feels like the epicenter of streetwear and just culture with like music and fashion, and it's doing a lot of things right. So I think we want to put ourselves there and see what it's really about.
Definitely. Yeah, we need to experience that market, see if it's quite similar or different to ours. We've heard murmurings. We know it's more competitive at a wholesale perspective and certainly at a retail perspective. So we're going to have to be at our best to cut through and speak, because I think it's about 3 times the size of the population. They're a lot more, on the pulse with what the culture wants. So I think it's going to be pretty sink or swim, but that's why we're here. Like we want to dive in.
Yeah, 100%. Should we maybe break down like some strategy for like expanding over there, and like if Europe is what we think it is and there is a need for us, like maybe how we're approaching that?
Yeah, like what's it look like long term?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the listener, like it's certainly part of the plan to move there permanently. Especially with everything we spoke about so far, I think learning's being probably the key theme. We know that there's just such a diverse place, Europe, for business, and we just need to go explore it. So, maybe perhaps rephrase that question a little for me.
Well, if let's say we think Europe's going to be a good market for what we do at wholesale and retail, like how are we approaching like actually tangibly taking the business over there, getting it started? Like maybe what would that look like a little bit?
Well, I think first we'd have to choose which country we're setting up in. And at this point in time, this could be, again, we're going to Europe for 3 months for a reason to survey the lands, I guess. Sounds like we're settlers, but we're going to check out predominantly the UK and Portugal at this point. And those are the two that probably make the most sense from the market and the product fit, etc. So I'd imagine we'd choose one of those 2 countries. Get a feel. So that would be first and foremost.
Yeah. So the consumers know what we've figured out, and it's probably more being in the wholesale industry, is we're going to have to essentially set up exactly what we have here in Europe, somewhere in Europe, to service that market. Like we're not going to be able to service it from Australia with things like shipping and lead times and that sort of nature. So I suppose luckily, like we have been able to establish what we have here in Australia. So that gives us a good blueprint for potentially how it can look. But a big part of the trip's going to be us figuring out, cool, maybe where are a lot of the warehouses in Europe, or where do a lot of people ship from? Where did most of the manufacturers and things like that?
I think as well, probably the everyday person doesn't understand our wholesale model, that it's so entrenched with the screen printers and embroiderers. So, once you buy a blank, you want to decorate it, you want to put your logos on it. And Hence, we have to work, as we do here in Australia, extremely closely with really high quality printers.
Yeah.
So that's great for Europe because it gives us some stability of who we need to speak to and where to head. I think from a retail perspective, it's a bit more wishy-washy.
Yeah.
It's a bit, try to meet the right people. Is that models? Is that manufacturers? It's a lot broader. But I think with wholesale, it's predominantly factories and it's screen printers.
Yeah.
More or less. And you can Google the shit out of it. Like we could build out a rock solid plan of all the printers in the UK within an hour.
Yeah, I suppose the best outcome for us would be going there, meeting a lot of people, having a really good idea of what it would look like to move start operations over there as well as in Australia, try to start a retail, the retail side of things over there as well. And at this point, we're thinking, should we come back start of August, maybe come back for a few months to round out the year, and then either look to go back permanently end of this year or maybe first thing next year.
Yep.
So just to give you guys an idea, that's what it looks like in our minds.
Yeah.
Things can change though, of course.
Okay, no.
They change fucking quick around here.
Yeah, they do. And that's great. We're a small business, and I think you have to be versatile, back to what I said, but having Henry here to hold us down for a little bit as well. Versatility is kind of the key word. A lot of our competitors have, probably a bigger list of directors than we do staff members. So, that means delays in my perspective. It also means big business. So let's wrap it up, Jack. What is the best outcome in your perspective in the next 3 months being in Europe? We're leaving next week. If we were to return in early August, what's happened?
I think first and foremost, we've seen a completely new world that we've never known before, which I think there's so much to say for that. And having done that previously, I credit those experiences for so much. And so, yeah, first and foremost, I'm just looking forward to us expanding our minds and learning new cultures and seeing new places and faces and all that sort of thing that comes with travel. That's definitely like really energizing for me. So I think from a personal note, would be an amazing outcome for us to meet so many people and have a bunch of connections and people that we really like over there and can point us in the right direction. And then in a business sense, I would say having a really good understanding of the market over there and the landscape. And, if we do maybe more at a wholesale level, if we were to go over there, what are the products that people are buying? How does the market work? It could be very different here in Australia. So we might have to pivot a little bit with certain things. What does it look like starting a business in Europe? What kind of paperwork do we have to get across the line for that?
Tax,
residency. We have a bit of an idea, but again, like until you're there and you're on the ground, it's really hard to know.
Absolutely. No, Jack, I couldn't have said it any better myself. Couldn't be doing this trip with anyone better. In all honesty, I think, this business we've been running has had a lot of bumps along the way. Almost every day has like a new hurdle for us to overcome, and Europe's certainly going to be the biggest. But I'm fully confident that, I'm doing this with you. Wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. And I extend that as well to Henry, who's behind the roadcast equipment today. Someone needs to edit this podcast, but I extend that to him.
Likewise, man.
Yeah,
Likewise.
This is going to be very special. And to all those that have supported up till now, 102 episodes in, yeah, it is pretty insane. I think if we were to go back to that first episode when we're wide-eyed and we still are, hence why we're going to Europe, but maybe those eyes are a little less narrow, a little more narrow. I don't know what that analogy is, but Jack, I do want to conclude with this. We both listened to this podcast about a month ago. It was the CEO of Gymshark, Ben Francis. And he used this example that with Gymshark back when they started 10 years ago now, that there was a competitor, funnily enough, here in Melbourne, Australia. And he said their marketing was just as good. The product was just as good. And he goes, to be honest, I think the only reason they never took off to become the billion-dollar company that Gymshark became was because of the proximity, because of shipping times. When you're in Europe, you can ship across the entire continent within like days. It takes probably longer to send a parcel from Australia to Perth than it does from the top of Europe to the bottom. So
it's that classic Malcolm Gladwell, where if, by locating yourself somewhere, like rather than somewhere else, like that can give you, I think it's something crazy like an 80% more likelihood of actually being successful in what you're doing,
Right.
just based on the location that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think, Jesse and I still have, and Henry still have a lot of aspirations to really, explore and take this business to different heights and really learn what that is and feels like. So that's why we're, going over to somewhere like a Europe that's a lot bigger than here in Australia.
Yeah. And Australia will always be our roots and where we're from, and we're proud of that.
I'm very lucky.
We are. And it's one of the best, if not best place to live in the world, especially if you are looking to, have that comfort. Because, we've had friends go to New York recently and talk about the poverty, and like there's also, Europe has a huge problem with that as well. So I think this certainly isn't shitting on Australia. We love where we're from, but from a purely business perspective with what we do in fashion, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer that we get our asses over there. So
I agree. Let's go.
let's do it. Peace.